Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and we still hear a lot about degrading soil. We are Iowans, after all. We hear about that in the news all the time. The soil's not good anymore, topsoil problems, no-till, low-till, whatever till. And, you know, there's some guilt because we're Iowans, but not all of us understand agriculture. Maybe we should. And what's AI doing to the industry? We're going to talk about all of that today, kind of give you a crash course, but also talk about future tech and how soil quality and sustainable farming practices are changing. And to do that, we have Jayson Ryner, the founder of ReEnvision Ag. And first of all, thank you for coming onto the show, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for the invitation.
But then also, congratulations on the $100,000 you just got from the InnoVenture Challenge right here. It took place here in Des Moines, I think.
Yeah.
So our studio
is. The InnoVenture Fund is the Iowa's public venture capital fund.
Yeah.
And to draw companies to their fund, they do the InnoVenture Challenge, which is a $100,000 winner-take-all competition. And in the first week of December, we were fortunate enough to be the winning team from the top 3 in the live pitch contest. So that was a great boost to the company. And
we're going to go into, I want to set some background here and really dig into kind of why the technology you invented is necessary and important. But there's a lot of educational process, I feel like, that leads up to that. So we'll start to talk about the tech at the end. But as a reminder, everybody, we come to you every week. We bring you fascinating Iowans. We're teaching you all about the state and stuff you didn't know. Make sure, so you know what I'm going to say at this point. Make sure to subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and give us, if you think we're doing a good job, give us a 5-star review and maybe leave a comment on how great it is and tell your neighbor. No one will ever do this, but tell your neighbor to subscribe to the podcast. That'd be very helpful. So there's a lot to get in here, but let's start with topsoil problems and like soil in general. I know that as Iowans, this is something we hear a lot, especially if we're listening to news programs or going into this stuff a lot. But I know that very few Iowans, if they're not in the fields, because you have 7-year farming background, I think Plymouth, Iowa, right?
Rudd, Iowa, real close to Plymouth,
Iowa.
Yeah.
Got it. So, you know, you're in the tech side, but you're also on the farming side. You've had your hands literally dirty. So what are these topsoil problems? Like, what is the degrading soil? What is this? What's going on?
Well, for centuries and centuries, Iowa was covered with oak savanna. And the grass would grow, and then winter would come and it would decay, and that's what built our topsoil. Well, now for about a century, we've been farming that ground and using tillage to break up the soil and get it ready to have a beautiful seed bed and plant. And then we've been using what some call artificial fertilizers, potassium and phosphorus typically are but we've been replacing those to keep kind of the fertility going. But the longer that we use the topsoil and the more that we till it so that we can get ready to farm, the more erosion problem that we have and the more breakdown of the soil structure, because we don't have that constant organic matter building in the topsoil that we had for centuries before we farmed here in Iowa.
So the tilling is the problem. This is the central, I mean, I'm sure there are other challenges, but one of the challenge is the tilling, is like roughing up the topsoil, mixing it all up, and that's one of the challenges, not letting that like dead stuff decay and erode, is that the right word? Decay on top of the soil. This is one of the big problems. We want it to decay, not erode. Yes, thank you.
We want it to, and farmers used to call that trash.
Oh, wait, is that just like bad stuff they want to get rid of, or is that a term that
So the field residue for a long time was called trash.
Oh.
And it was the leftover stuff from when we harvested the corn crop or the soybean crop. Now we call it residue because it's not trash.
Right, because it's valuable.
It has high value, and we need to recycle that into the soil biome. So if the listener thinks about any place in Iowa anyway, any place that the soil is bare, weeds grow.
Right.
Mother Nature wants to have a cover over herself. And the roots then are growing into the soil, and there's a soil biome. There's millions of little bugs, I call them, that are in the soil that we can't see. And those bugs are a living system. And by having a living root in that system at all times, even here in the wintertime when it might be dormant, it's still important to have a live root available in that soil structure.
And so this is the no-till thing, right? So when we hear about no-till, this is what they're trying to address is by not tilling, as no-till would suggest, they're trying to leave that active layer of decay and good stuff on top. This is the idea.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
There's an unfortunately, yes.
It is not it is not the best way or the easiest way for farmers to remain profitable and grow their best crop next year.
Got it.
So farming margins are very, very thin.
Yeah.
And for the farmer to have the best chance to grow a really good crop next year, to make money, to pay for all their machinery and pay for all their inputs and pay to feed their children, the easiest way is to use tillage, to go out in the fall and till the soil.
Sure.
And work that residue into the soil structure. And what that does is it supercharges, it adds oxygen to that soil structure, and it supercharges the soil biome to break down that residue faster, which allows it to release any of the fertility that might be present, and breaks that down and makes it easier to create a great seed bed for the next year.
Yeah.
So if we want farmers to stop tilling because it's really better for the soil biome, it's more sustainable, it's more regenerative, we have to give them the tools to do it in that new environment without losing yield.
Right. And that's what I like about this, because there are usually, when it comes to sustainability talk, the practicality meets idealism. Right. So you have some people who, I mean, let's be honest, there are a lot of people who complain about sustainable practices while their lifestyle is very unsustainable, so we see a lot of that.
Yes.
But a lot of it comes at farmers. They're like, you shouldn't be doing this because I'm like, okay, cool, great. They have to. Like, they can't they're not running a nonprofit. They do have to put food on their tables so they can put food on your table. So instead of complaining, how about you do something about it? And that's where everyone stops. And so unlike everyone, you're actually doing something about it, and which I appreciate. But you bring up the great point, which is, it's kind of please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost a short-term versus long-term. Like, the farmer needs to produce this year. They need to survive. They need to put food on the table. And so some of them are forced to make the soil decision of short-term gain over long-term gain. So the short-term gain would be tilling and getting the nutrients into the soil. But long-term, that erodes the soil. Is that a fair
It is
summary?
Absolutely a fair summary.
Okay.
It's the long play versus the short play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so what you're trying to do is give people the long play, and the short play. So I do want to focus on a little bit of the practical implications that are happening right now as a result of this, because I think this is true, that the nutrients in our produce that we're eating, these are less nutritionally dense than before because of this problem that you're working on. Is that correct? Because I think it's like magnesium, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, zinc, selenium, and iron. We're getting less of those from our produce because of the degrading soil health. Is this correct?
I am no expert on that, but I do know that we have to replace the things that we take out.
Right.
That is an expense to the farmer, and the natural systems are degrading. And so to return to those natural systems that provide us all of the minerals that we need in our food. That's a very important part of it. Another statistic is that the Haber-Bosch system is how we make nitrogen fertilizer. And nitrogen fertilizer has good sides and bad sides, just like it's trade-offs. But that over half of the nitrogen in our bodies is a product of this Haber-Bosch system, which is the number one or number two ways that agriculture adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to use nitrogen to have enough food to sustain the planet.
Right. Yep.
But when you have a natural system, you need to use less nitrogen because more of it is available from the natural process. And so that's another huge portion of the health for human beings and the health for the environment and the planet and the sustainability over the long term.
Now, going back to carbon capture, because we hear about like kind of, I don't even know what to call this, but like artificial carbon capture, maybe I can call it that, practices where people are trying to capture it in manufacturing sense. But you've posted, I think, a little bit about this on LinkedIn, which is like if what you said earlier about making sure the dirt is covered, making sure things stay on top of the soil, we're not mixing it in. Is this a natural carbon capture method? Like, is this essentially teaching our farmland how to naturally suck carbon out of the air?
It is literally carbon capture from the natural system.
Yeah.
So when we put...
Because we don't hear anything about this.
When we put oxygen in the soil, we supercharge that soil biome, and just like us, that exhales carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
That's what releases the CO2 into the air. If we don't till, if we allow the systems to run at their natural level, yes, more carbon gets retained in the soil. The soil organic matter level, OM is what's on the soil test, goes up, and that allows the soil then to keep that carbon in and because the plants remove the CO2 from the air.
Right, correct, yeah.
That's what they do, and they store it in their roots.
Yeah.
And they store it in their tissue, which we then put on top of the ground and let degrade naturally.
So if people are doing it, I don't want to say right, but if people are farming sustainably and able to correct all these issues and the challenges that they want to correct, it's not like we have farmers in Iowa that are saying, no, I don't want to do this because I don't like green crap. And like they want to. And, you know, in many of the farmers I talk to, when okay, so reset. It's really funny when I talk to some like green people and they're like, farmers should be doing this. And you talk to some farmers and they're like, yeah, we've been doing that for hundreds of years. Congratulations, kids.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We've known this. We've been working on this for 100 years. Thank you. Appreciate it. But the essentially the fields, if they're being done sustainably, and if farmers have tools to actually leave these cover crops and this matter on top, which they want to do, these giant fields everywhere, at least in Iowa and other agricultural states, are giant. Extremely efficient carbon capture tools, essentially, and it covers a ton of the country, obviously, agricultural land. But we never discuss this as a method of carbon capture. We discuss like billion-dollar subsidies for new technology, but we don't think about, well, actually, we have carbon capture tools right in our home state, right? Why are we ignoring this so much? I don't understand that.
Well, the natural system, depending on your point of view, whether you're a creationist or evolutionary, the natural system works.
Yeah.
And if you look at the amount, as humans, though, we have our egos and we think that we can do it better and we can improve it a little bit. Well, I mean, we're talking about millions of years of evolutionary change to make this system that works.
Yeah.
And if you look at Iowa in July and August, when we have the corn crop grown and the soybeans are green and beautiful, we actually create more oxygen or the same amount of oxygen as the Amazon rainforest.
Wow. Whoa. Say that again?
So
I almost missed it.
We have enough vegetation growing in Iowa that we do the same thing that the Amazon rainforest does.
That's crazy.
Our difference is that we have seasons that shut everything down.
Sure.
And so, we're not ever going to have, I at least in our lifetimes, I don't foresee us having the climate that they have in Brazil. But so by having a living cover crop, though, we can extend that.
Right.
If we have cereal rye growing over the course, from the time the soybeans are harvested in late September, early October until now, because here we are in a warm winter. Things haven't gone dormant yet. People are still mowing their lawns.
That's true.
I mean, even where I live in the northern part of the state, we still have grass growing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the longer that we have more green stuff growing, the more carbon we sequester and the more oxygen we release.
That's interesting. So I'm not like going to, go down this path, but it's almost like if we do have, if climate change raises the temperature by another, let's say 10 degrees, maybe there's an argument to be made that we actually capture more carbon, which cools off the planet. I mean, obviously neither one of us are environmentalists, but that's where my mind goes.
That is the natural system.
Yeah, interesting. That's fascinating. So what's fascinating about this is I want you to walk through the current planting system, which uses discs, and I'm sure people have seen this, and this is what you guys have invented. This is why you just won $100,000 for this system you've developed. So the current system uses discs, and it basically, that's how things are planted, and your system uses spikes. Can you kind of compare those and explain why this was necessary? And how it solves the problem, but I'll cue you if we need.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
I was a music teacher. I left the farm in the 80s to be a music teacher. And I went back to the farm at 43 years old and started up my family's farming operation again from scratch.
Oh, gosh.
And so with the tractor that was delivered to the farm when I was in kindergarten, when I was 6, and a borrowed 6-row planter.
Nice.
And for those who don't know, 6-row planters are not what we use anymore. I mean, we're talking 24, 36 rows. 24 rows has kind of become the standard.
That's why they look super wide when they're going
super long. Yeah, super wide. Yeah. So I went back and started farming. And because I was a beginning farmer, even though I was 43, it's not a young farmer program. It's a beginning farmer. And believe it or not, the average age of the beginning farmer in the United States is about 42, 43 years old. Yes. So people who are starting farming are going back to the farm, because we've had careers and been able to make some money and those kinds of things. So
weird. Wow.
I went back to the farm and started this farming operation, and I signed up for a beginning farmer program with the NRCS. The national government pays beginning farmers to adopt no-till, strip-till, and cover crop.
Really?
Yes, and I used that money because they actually pay more than it costs to do. And I used that money to sustain and build up my new farming operation from scratch. Now, why does the government do it to young farmers? Because they're the ones that need the capital, and they're the ones that are most likely to change. They're most likely to be open to adoption. So I started using no-till, strip-till, and cover crops. And my father was a no-till soybean farmer in the 1980s, so he was an early adopter. And so I grew up with that, so I was fine with it. And I learned that I was about 4 days behind my neighbors whenever I wanted to plant.
Oh.
And
because of the no-till thing.
Because of the no-till. When you use tillage, when the farmer uses tillage, they dry out the soil and make it ready to be planted in.
So the soil needs to be dry. This is another,
because of the only system that's used on 700 million acres around the world is a double disc opener. So 2 metal discs pressed together that create a seed trench. That's the only way we have to do it all over the world.
Got it.
Think about every acre of corn in Iowa times 10
Yeah.
is what's planted around the world with a double disc opener.
And then in the back behind those two discs, they basically look like a pointed snowplow, kind of.
Correct.
And then behind, there's a machine also dropping the seeds in the trench.
And then it just drops the seed in the trench.
Yeah.
And then there's a closing system that smushes the trench back closed again.
Okay, got it.
So if you think about smushing the trench open and smushing the trench closed, well, if the soil is wet, what do we get? We get a mud ball or we get compaction.
Oh.
And that compaction keeps the plant from being able to send its roots where it needs to and to get out of the ground the way it needs to. And it limits yield. And research studies have shown you can have 20 to 50% yield loss because of disc opener compaction.
Seriously?
20 to 50%.
Just from that just from the discs opening it, dropping it, and closing it back. 20% loss.
20 to 50%.
Whoa, okay.
So if you can imagine a farmer has one tool that they can use, and they risk 20 to 50% of their profit, well, of their total production, not just their profit, but their total production.
Right.
20 to 50% goes away. Poof.
Yeah.
Is that farmer going to use that tool in the wrong environment?
So they risk 20 to 50% if
of
the environmental
gross.
condition of their gross, if the environmental conditions when they're planting are not absolutely perfect.
Well, not absolutely
close.
perfect.
Yeah.
There is a window of fitness.
Yeah. Okay.
The farmer will call the field fit.
So when we hear on the radio, like, because I used to be on WHO radio, right? They did a lot of agricultural programming. But we hear on the radio, farmers are freaking out all the time because it's just a little bit too moist or a little bit too dry. This is why. Because their entire year depends on those conditions. Basically, it's a very narrow planting window is the problem.
We have a 20-day planting window in the state of Iowa.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy.
20 days to plant the entire state of Iowa. And because of climate change, that window is shrinking.
Interesting.
So according to Iowa State, we've lost 27% of the days suitable to spring field work in the state of Iowa over the course of the last 40 years.
Interesting.
So now we have a 20-day window. But really, we have a 15-day window because we've lost 27% of the days.
But part of the reason for that narrowing window is because of the practices we're using, correct? Because what so talk about these seed spikes and what you're doing and how it actually widens the window to a more reasonable range. Let's talk about that. I want to dig into that.
So when I started farming, I found out I was 4 days behind everybody else. Then we had the wettest years on record in 2018 and 2019. And so if you're 4 days behind your neighbor and it rains during that 4 days,
you just became 10 days behind.
You just became 10 days behind. And now you're out of the planting window. And so you can't yield.
Right.
So my goal was to widen the planting window back out so that a no-tiller could plant on the same day that someone who used tillage. And thinking, all right, well, if there's no disadvantage to the timing of planting, more guys will adopt it.
Right.
What we learned was that not only did we get those 4 days back, but we added 5 to 7 days.
Wow. Okay.
Because the simplest, most precise way to plant a seed is to poke a hole and put a seed in it.
Kind of like what you do in your garden.
Exactly what we do in our garden, exactly what kindergartners do all over the state of Iowa with a styrofoam cup full of dirt and they push a corn seed in it.
Yeah.
Right? We've all done it.
Yeah.
So why aren't we doing that as the principal planting method? And the reason is that there wasn't a way to do it.
Not scalable.
Not scalable.
It's not.
And so we've developed a way that we poke a hole in the soil, and the device that we use to poke a hole, and any device is called a dibble. We use that dibble, and then our proprietary part is that we have an ejection pin within the dibble that presses the seed into the soil, because the other thing that you have to have is seed to soil contact.
Yeah.
And that's so that the water can transfer from the soil into the seed, so the seed will wake up and go, hey, it's time to grow.
Right.
And up it goes. So by our current system is to smush the soil back around the seed. And like in the garden, you take your foot and you step on it, right? I mean, that's just what we do. So, but that compacts the soil.
Right.
And that prohibits the plant from coming out of the ground, especially if you get a heavy rain and it gets a crust on it or it gets really hot.
Unless it's a dandelion, you're planting it under concrete, then it finds a way. But everything else we need to eat does not.
And because Mother Nature wants to be covered, that dandelion can come up.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And so that's the idea is the simplest way to plant a seed is to poke a hole and put the seed in the ground. And with our system, the only thing that touches the soil around the seed is the seed itself.
Yeah.
So that is by definition the minimum amount of compaction around the seed that you can have and still have soil contact.
So you've basically discovered a way to almost not disturb all that, and you can go right through all that residue. Thank you. There it is. You can go right through all the residue without tilling and still do this.
Correct.
Yeah, and so like you said, just to point this out, the innovation, you called it a dibble. That's not new. Like people have heard of that before, at least farmers. I hadn't. And poking a hole and putting the seed there, as you pointed out, every little kid has done this in elementary school. The innovation here, the breakthrough here, is the fact that you can do that in scale and put the seed precisely where the hole was. That's the breakthrough. No one's been able to inject a seed, essentially.
Yeah, and I go back to the cave people. Like when we first started planting seeds as a being, there were seed pokers and stick draggers. And there were, the people that were poking a stick would really make the seed be in the ground in the exact precise way. Yeah. And the stick draggers did it a lot faster. Mm-hmm. Well, now we have a way to be a stick poker. Yeah. Yeah. And because we've learned that precision really matters for maximizing the amount that we can grow. So by being absolutely precise, we can maximize the amount that we can grow per acre, and now we can do it fast enough that the stick draggers will adopt it.
So this technology is not just about sustainable. I mean, it's definitely sustainable. It's definitely aiding in carbon capture. I would argue, just based on the anecdotal stuff I've been researching, it increases the nutritional density of food over time, but it's also increasing yield. Without the use of additional growth agents or whatnot, just this technology process alone is increasing yield.
And that is the goal, to create for farmers a more economical way, better for that they can widen their margins, right, to make more money while adopting these practices that are necessary for society.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I hate saying I'm a PR comms guy in my actual job. This is my fun thing, but so I hate saying this, but it's kind of like, well, I don't hate saying this. It's the same way like Tesla got people to adopt electric cars. They knew if they made a weak, puny electric car, no one would care. And so what they did is they invented a lot into it's better. Like this is it's faster. It's like more powerful because they knew no one was going to like invest in a crappier car. They wanted to invest in some kind of, at least in their mind, some kind of step up. So that's why you see all these little drag race videos of Teslas, like some family sedan beating a Porsche 911, because people want the step up in technology. They don't want to make trade-offs. Like as much as everyone will complain about sustainability, when push comes to shove, very few people are willing to make these big sacrifices and trade-offs. But if you can find a way to say, look, not only is this sustainable and good for the planet, but you get more freaking yield, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Exactly.
So does this enable, and there's another question here too, but does this, I know that, at least I think, because I was talking to another company working on this, organic farming is supposedly more profitable. However, it's also more challenging. So does this kind of practice, the seed spikes and what you're doing at, almost forgot it, ReEnvision Ag, does this allow organic farming sustainability then?
It will certainly help organic farming sustainability.
Sure, yeah.
In Iowa, one of the sins of organic farming,
ooh, this is good,
is that without herbicide, the only way that we have currently to eliminate weeds is tillage.
Oh, sure.
So organically grown corn and soybeans typically really destroy the soil structure, because you're farming like 1950 again, where you go out and you till the soil 3 times in the spring. So you till it, you let the weeds grow, you till it again, you let the weeds grow, you till it again, then you plant it, and then you run a drag over it to keep the weeds down, and then you cultivate it 2 or 3 times. And so all of those passes across the field with iron in the soil. Every time you do that, you're releasing carbon and you're breaking down soil structure and allowing for more erosion. Exactly.
So, okay. So organic, again, we're not researchers or scientists in this room, but I'm just making, normal Iowan guesses, but it may be true then that organic farming has no pesticides are being absorbed into the grain or into the produce. And that's great because we don't want to eat pesticides. However, it also may be true that organic farming is actually lowering the nutritional density of our vegetation, of our produce, maybe,
and
right?
Certainly allowing for more erosion of our topsoil and breaking down of our soil structure. And when the soil structure, if you took a shovel and went out in your lawn and you dig a hole and you flip it over, the pieces of dirt are going to be big, round clods.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been because there's excellent soil structure there.
Right.
And when I'm talking to school kids, I talk about rocks in a jar. If you have a jar full of rocks, which one holds more water? A jar of rocks or a jar of sand? Which one can you put more water in? Well, certainly the jar of rocks. So when we break down that soil structure and make the soil into little particles, it becomes more like the sand.
Mm-hmm.
The water can't absorb into it as fast. It can't hold as much water. And so what happens is the water runs off.
Oh, okay. So doing the math here then, the spiking and then putting seeds in there also allows you better water utilization.
Correct. No-till farmers have experienced, especially like last year when it was dry, that their soil has more water holding capacity.
Interesting.
And so the crop can last longer between rains.
So this technology then being invented right here in Iowa. And of course, we've been joined with Jayson Ryner, the founder of ReEnvision Ag. Jayson, before I let you go, what is the website? And are you commercially available? Can farmers buy this stuff, or is it still kind of in the developmental pipeline? And then, of course, give that website.
We're at www.reenvisionag.com. And if you go to YouTube and type in ReEnvision Ag, you'll see videos of our trials and our planters and our development. Right now, we are pre-sales.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on our minimum viable product. So in the spring, we will have 6 rows created of our minimum viable product that we're going to take out and test with a major seed company here in the state of Iowa to get emergence and yield data that farmers need to adopt it.
Ooh,
and then we will be going to farmers and working on lease agreements for 2025. And so farmers
so it's coming around the bend here pretty quick.
We're coming pretty fast. and so for spring of 2025, we'll have early sales and lease agreements because the equipment is expensive.
Sure.
And so for a farmer to change and adopt something new to relieve the economic stress again, to take the risk out of trying something new, that's why we're doing lease agreements.
Perfect.
And so that's we're looking. We'll be at the Iowa Ag Expo at the end of January here in Des Moines. We were just at the Nebraska Ag Expo, and then we'll be doing field trials all summer long, and then going to farm shows and looking for farmers to be early adopters.
So cool. Jayson Ryner, founder of ReEnvision Ag. Again, congratulations on the InnoVenture Challenge, $100,000. And thank you so much for coming on the Iowa podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. It's been fantastic.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa podcast.